One rookie changed everything, and the numbers barely begin to capture it. Caitlin Clark didn't just break 1B records in assists and three-pointers.
Now to college basketball sensation Caitlin Clark. She broke the NCAA women's all-time scoring record and
She converted empty arenas into sellouts, pushed league-wide attendance up by nearly 50%, and forced opposing cities to move games into larger venues just to handle the demand. But the story doesn't end there. A league already operating under internal tension suddenly found itself divided over credit, attention, and ownership of the spotlight. Then came something nobody saw coming. Taylor Swift entering the conversation and turning courtside appearances into full-scale global cultural events. What followed completely blurred the boundary between sports celebrity and movement as women's basketball detonated into mainstream consciousness almost overnight. But was this organic growth or something far larger unfolding right in front of everyone? The rookie who changed everything. Let's begin with the numbers, because the numbers are genuinely extraordinary. When Caitlin Clark stepped onto the court for the Indiana Fever in the spring of 2024, nobody in the history of professional women's basketball had ever done what she proceeded to do across a single rookie season.
And she became the heavy favorite for Rookie of the Year, with her name even starting to creep into all WNBA territory.
By the time the final buzzer sounded on her first year as a professional, Clark had established the WNBA rookie record for assists in a season with 337. She had set the rookie record for three-point field goals made in a season with 122. She had become only the second player in league history to record multiple triple-doubles as a rookie. And she accomplished it twice. In a league that had been developing elite talent for nearly 3 decades, a 22-year-old from Ames, Iowa, walked in and made everyone look twice. But the numbers that truly told the story in 2024 were not the ones appearing on any stat sheet. They were the ones at the turnstiles. Consider this. Just 1 year before Clark arrived, the Indiana Fever were drawing roughly 4,000 fans per home game. 4,000, one of the lowest home attendance totals in the entire league. Then Caitlin Clark was selected first overall in the WNBA draft.
With the first pick in the 2024 WNBA draft, the Indiana Fever select Caitlin Clark, University of Iowa.
And everything transformed overnight. By the close of her rookie season, the Indiana Fever had drawn 343,000 fans across 40 games, the highest combined home and road attendance figure in WNBA history. The next closest team had more than 200,000 fewer fans. Let that settle for a moment. 200,000 fewer. That is not a gap. That is a canyon. That is the difference between a regular season and a phenomenon. What did Clark do to that building in Indianapolis? She turned Gainbridge Fieldhouse into one of the most difficult tickets in American sports. The Fever set a new NBA record for home attendance in a single season. Road games featuring Indiana were being relocated to larger arenas simply to accommodate the volume of demand. 3 games that season drew more than 20,000 fans, including a regular season finale in Washington that brought 711 people through the doors, the largest crowd ever recorded for a regular season WNBA game at that point in time.
A sold-out crowd in Evanston tonight for the Northwestern women's basketball game against the Iowa Hawkeyes.
The league-wide impact was equally staggering. The WNBA averaged 9,867 fans per game in 2024, a 48% increase over the previous season. The entire league saw its attendance climb. Every single franchise improved. The season produced 154 sellouts compared to just 45 the year before. Overall, it represented the highest league-wide average attendance since 1999. A sport that had been fighting for mainstream recognition for over 2 decades suddenly had it, because of one player, and the television numbers deserve their own conversation. The 2024 WNBA All-Star Game and regular season produced ratings the league had not witnessed in years. Fever games consistently drew viewership figures that made executives at ESPN sit up and pay attention.
With the NCAA tournament, the WNBA is out with new TV viewership numbers. It's been the most watched in the league's history, averaging 1.3 million viewers per game.
This was not a temporary spike. This was not a one-week curiosity bump that faded quietly. This was a sustained season-long audience that showed up week after week because Caitlin Clark was playing basketball, and they had no intention of missing a single moment of it. How does a rookie generate this kind of impact? It begins with the 4 years she spent at Iowa, where she became the all-time leading scorer in NCAA basketball history, men's or women's.
A history-making day in college basketball. Iowa's Caitlin Clark became the leading scorer in the NCAA Division I basketball, woman or man.
Clark entered the professional league not as a prospect people were hoping might develop into something special, but as someone who had already demonstrated at the highest level of college basketball. that she was categorically different. The 2024 NCAA National Championship game featuring her Iowa Hawkeyes against South Carolina peaked at 24.1 million viewers, the most watched basketball game of any kind since 2019. That audience did not disappear when Clark turned professional. They followed her directly into the WNBA. What makes this story so compelling is that Caitlin Clark was not handed a polished winning environment. The Indiana Fever finished 20-20, a .500 record. They lost in the first round of the playoffs. And yet, week after week, people packed into arenas across the country simply to watch her play, simply to watch her compete. When was the last time any player in any sport sold out opposing arenas as a rookie on a team that didn't make it past the first round? That is the precise scale of what unfolded in 2024. And it opened the door to something even larger, the league that wasn't ready for her. Here is where the story becomes complicated. Because while millions of fans were falling in love with Caitlin Clark and the sport she was reviving, not everyone inside the 1B was celebrating what was happening. There was tension, there was friction, and there were moments throughout that rookie season that ignited a non-national conversation about what was truly operating beneath the surface of the league's remarkable growth. The debate was never genuinely about whether Clark was talented. She was demonstrably, statistically, undeniably exceptional. The debate was about something far more uncomfortable, about who was receiving credit for the league's surge, and whether that credit was being distributed fairly among the women who had been constructing the foundation of the WNBA long before Clark ever arrived. Veterans who had spent a decade in the league, grinding through seasons when the arenas were half empty and the cameras were pointed elsewhere, found themselves in a genuinely strange position. The sport they had devoted their careers to was finally receiving the attention it had always deserved.
She's the first women's basketball player to really catch so many people's attention.
But the conversation surrounding that attention was almost entirely concentrated on one name. There were physical incidents as well. Clark was involved in rough play on multiple occasions throughout the season, and some of those moments became significant talking points across sports media. Opposing players were more aggressive with her on the court than many observers felt was appropriate. Some analysts pointed to what they described as a double standard, suggesting Clark was being targeted in ways that indicated not everyone in the league was comfortable with the magnitude of the spotlight she carried. Others disagreed.
Well, they called the wrong foul on the floor, so
several seniors for this Georgia ball club.
Very rough fouls at the end. Clark will bury it.
Arguing that Clark was simply experiencing the physical contact that any star-level player receives, and that the reaction from certain corners was considerably overblown. The debate was intense, and it played out across social media, sports talk programs, and inside locker rooms all across the country. What made this tension so significant was that it forced an honest and overdue conversation about power, recognition, and representation in women's sports. The players who had come before Clark had built something genuinely real. They had kept the 1B alive through years of modest ratings and quiet stadiums. They deserved recognition for that. And at the same time, Clark had arrived and accomplished something those same years had been unable to produce. She had delivered a mass audience to women's basketball in a manner that was transforming the sport, while everyone was watching in real time.
Call it the Caitlin Clark effect, or whatever you want to call this. A different kind of energy and excitement swept over Minneapolis on Wednesday.
Both things could be true simultaneously, and both things were true. The league itself appeared caught somewhere in the middle. The WNBA was experiencing a financial and cultural windfall unlike anything in its history, but the internal dynamics surrounding how credit was assigned and how the star-making machinery operated were being examined more critically than ever before. Was the league doing enough to lift all of its players on the wave that Clark had generated? Were the marketing resources following the story that was actually driving the momentum? These were fair and reasonable questions, and they were being raised loudly from multiple directions. And through every bit of it, Caitlin Clark kept playing basketball.
Clark coming down the left side, just so much space.
She did not escalate the conflicts publicly. She did not add fuel to any fire. She showed up to every game, gave everything she had on the floor, and allowed the numbers to speak on her behalf. That restraint, that singular and unwavering focus, is a significant part of why her story resonated so deeply with the audiences who were tuning in. They were not simply watching a great basketball player perform. They were watching someone manage extraordinary external pressure with extraordinary internal grace. And in arenas from Indianapolis to Washington, that story was pulling in people who had never once given the WNBA a single thought before. When Taylor Swift entered the story. Now we arrive at the part of this story that genuinely changed the entire landscape. Because Caitlin Clark's season did not only capture the attention of sports fans, it captured the attention of someone whose cultural reach extends far beyond any stadium, any sport, any league on earth. Taylor Swift had been watching. And when Taylor Swift directs her attention towards something, the world immediately pays attention alongside her. To understand why this matters, you need to understand what Taylor Swift did to the NFL just 1 year before Clark's historic WNBA season. When Swift began attending Kansas City Chiefs games in support of her boyfriend, Travis Kelce.
On Saturday, January 18th, the Cruel Summer Singer was joined by WNBA star Caitlin Clark at Arrowhead Stadium to watch the Chiefs beat the Texans in a playoff game.
The ripple effect was immediate and completely measurable. Networks reported meaningful viewership increases among young women during Chiefs games. Merchandise sales jumped sharply, searches for NFL schedules and team rosters surged. A fan base that already loved the sport gained millions of new casual viewers. Not because anything about the game itself had changed, but because someone they deeply admired had shown up in the stands. One person, one cultural force, and the NFL felt it almost immediately. The WNBA was about to experience something remarkably similar. Because the connection between Taylor Swift and Caitlin Clark was not manufactured inside any marketing department. It was genuine, it was personal, and it developed organically out of a shared appreciation between two generational figures who happened to be moving in increasingly overlapping circles. It began in the most human way imaginable with a concert. Caitlin Clark attended multiple performances of Taylor Swift's Eras Tour, including 2 consecutive nights when Swift performed at Lucas Oil Stadium.
Fever star Caitlin Clark came back to Lucas Oil Stadium for a second night in a row.
Back-to-back in Indianapolis in November of 2024. Clark, a self-described Swiftie who has publicly stated that her favorite Taylor Swift song is Enchanted, arrived as a completely genuine fan, not as a celebrity seeking a photograph. As someone who had loved this music since she was a young girl growing up in Iowa, when Swift's fans spotted Clark in a suite that evening, the reaction was electric. People were tossing friendship bracelets up toward her. Cameras swung in her direction. Caitlin Clark, the woman who had spent the entire summer selling out arenas herself, was suddenly the one standing in awe watching someone else's effect on a packed crowd. What happened next is the detail that gave millions of people genuine chills when they read it. According to the Time magazine story that named Clark as its 2024 Athlete of the Year,
you know that Caitlin Clark is the Time Athlete of the Year. How is your 24 hours?
Taylor Swift had personally sent Caitlin Clark 4 bags of Eras Tour merchandise along with a handwritten note. In that note, Swift told Clark that watching her from a distance had been genuinely inspiring. Swift expressed that she and Travis Kelce were both looking forward to watching Clark compete in person once the Eras Tour had wrapped up. The note was personal, it was warm, and it was the kind of gesture that communicates everything important about the character of the person who wrote it. Then came January 18th, 2025. The Kansas City Chiefs were facing the Houston Texans in the AFC Divisional Playoff at Arrowhead Stadium. And inside a suite above the field, 2 of the most recognized women in America were sitting side by side, talking, laughing, and embracing every time Kelce made a significant play. The NFL's own Instagram account posted the moment with the caption, "Life of 2 Ballon knowers." The internet did not simply react, it erupted. Images of Swift and Clark in that suite spread across every platform simultaneously. Sports fans, music fans, casual observers who had never watched a WNBA game in their lives. Everyone had a reaction. Social media ignited with the kind of authentic enthusiasm that no advertising investment can replicate. Fans described seeing the 2 of them together as feeling like a genuine cultural event. Some called it the crossover they had been waiting for, without realizing they were waiting for it. The images of the 2 of them embracing after a Kelce touchdown became some of the most widely shared sports photographs of the entire month. Clark later revealed on a podcast appearance with Sue Bird and Megan Rapinoe exactly what the 2 of them had been whispering about in that famous photograph that completely captured the internet's imagination.
Hey everybody, welcome to A Touch More Live from the Helium Comedy Club here in Indianapolis, Indiana. We might have to do that. Please welcome to the show, Caitlin Clark!
Clark shared that she had simply been walking Swift through the rules of football. It was a moment of pure and completely unfiltered humanity. 2 enormously famous women in the middle of one of the biggest cultural moments on the sports calendar, just being real people watching a game together. That is precisely what made it so powerful. That is precisely what made it so impossible not to share. You did not need to be a football fan or a basketball fan or Swiftie to understand what you were looking at. You were seeing 2 women at the absolute top of their respective worlds, simply being themselves. And Taylor Swift, being a genuine and enthusiastic supporter of Caitlin Clark, is not a minor development. Swift has demonstrated repeatedly that her public endorsement of people and things she genuinely cares about carries real and measurable consequences in the world. When she directed her fans to register to vote, registration numbers climbed noticeably within hours. When she appeared in an NFL suite, entirely new audiences discovered professional football. What happens when she shows up publicly, enthusiastically, and repeatedly to express her admiration for the most electrifying player in women's basketball? The WNBA was about to find out, the turning point for women's basketball. To truly understand why the combination of Caitlin Clark and Taylor Swift matters so far beyond any box, score, or concert ticket sales figure, you need to step back and look at the full picture. You need to look honestly at where women's sports has been and where it stands today, and ask yourself a straightforward question. Has anything remotely like this ever happened before? The WNBA has been fighting for mainstream relevance since its founding in 1997. The league has produced some of the greatest basketball players in the entire history of the sport. Players who captured Olympic gold medals.
Now the two-time NBA champion and four-time Olympic gold medalist is here to tell us more about this.
Who dominated professionally across 2 decades. Who carried the game entirely on their backs through years when the cameras were not watching and the mainstream conversation was happening somewhere else entirely. And through all of it, the league survived. It grew modestly and incrementally through the sheer force of the talent on its courts and the fierce dedication of a fan base that loved it, unconditionally. What happened in 2024 was different in kind, not simply in degree. The attendance numbers alone, a 48% increase within a single season, would be considered remarkable in any sport at any level anywhere on Earth. But it was the cultural weight behind those numbers that elevated the moment into something genuinely historic. Because for the first time in a very long time, people who had never once considered themselves WNBA fans were discovering reasons to become one. And 2 of the most powerful reasons had names that the entire world already knew. The financial implications are every bit as significant as the cultural ones. The WNBA is actively in the process of negotiating new broadcast agreements and expanding its commercial partnerships across the board.